Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the podcast, Field Goals and Forecast, from inside the radio station at 88.3 The Buzz, St. Bonaventure, New York. I am Ryan Adio, and I'm not joined by my good friend James Derrick today. It's just me. I'm on a solo mission. James went home for the Thanksgiving holiday. Respectable. I understand it. I should be home, but here we are. I'm still in the studio. Week 12 action has just concluded in the NFL. And a very, very good slate of games. I didn't think it was going to be. Going into this one, I really thought, wow, a lot of these games look like blowouts. I mean, Washington, Dallas, everyone kind of took the Commanders on that one. There's a lot of one-sided games coming into this one, but a lot of games that actually ended up going the other way. First off, though, we're going to talk about some news. Then I'll dive into those game recaps. Then I'll give you some fantasy advice, just me today. And, of course, I'll go into my quick picks to wrap this one up. Probably going to be a shorter episode than usual because I'm not talking to anybody. Just talking to you guys. So, all right, let's get this started. Let's start with some news. Obviously, the biggest news since I've left the podcast room here, since we recorded last week, the Giants have released Daniel Jones. Last week when we did our podcast, he was the emergency quarterback. He was that third guy. He was benched. It was Tommy DeVito, then Drew Lock, which still is a weird setup for me. I think they should try out Drew Lock a little bit. He had a good couple of years. He had that really good game. It was Seattle versus the Eagles. He had that one game where he just showed up, showed out. He's got a lot of potential. He was obviously a first-round pick by the Broncos back in 2019. So a lot to prove for him. But either way, not Daniel Jones. He's gone. He's cleared waivers. They've completely released him. The Giants are going to take $22.21 million in dead cap in 2025, but he would have counted for $41 million more against the cap if he were on the roster. So they do end up saving about $20 million in 2025 cap space. What a complete disaster. And of course, I'll dive into this later, but what a complete disaster. He goes from playing safety in training camp to being a free agent. It'll be interesting to see who signs him, but I've heard the Raiders wanted him and he didn't want to go there. I don't know, if you're Daniel Jones, how can you really be picky? Because you're not very good. I don't mean that in a mean way or anything. You're just not very good. You've proved time in and time out again that you have some potential, but you're not a starting level quarterback in the NFL. And I hang him up. It's over. I could go on and on about how much I don't like Daniel Jones, but you know what? It's not his fault he's put in this situation. And honestly, anybody on the Giants, if you're a quarterback for the Giants, it's not looking good. It's not looking good so far. But let's continue on with this news a little bit. Brandon Graham, Eagles' longtime edge rusher, is out for the season with a torn tricep. That is devastating for the Eagles. Graham is on a 1-year, $4 million contract, which basically means his time in Philly is probably over. Be really awesome to get him one last ring if they do make it that far, but he is not going to be part of the team for that run. He is out. Also, another Eagle that's a little banged up after their game against the Rams, sorry. Darius Slay, he has a concussion. That's a big hit to their defense. He's obviously their corner one. He's been very, very good all year, I would say. He's been very right where they need him to be. Him paired with Quinion Mitchell has been very fun to see. They've going from one of the worst secondaries in the league to a very scary secondary. Two guys now that can lock down corners instead of maybe just Slay. Obviously, James Bradbury was a mistake there. Avonte Maddox was a mistake there. But they've moved on. A lot of guys, especially Quinion Mitchell, who they just brought in, is very, very promising, has a lot of potential. I really liked him when he was coming out of Toledo. Obviously, a first-round pick, and he's looked good so far. Hopefully, he can cover the rest of the field where Slay usually plays. If Slay is out too long, probably 1 to 2 weeks. I wouldn't be worried about it. But obviously, Graham is a huge loss for them. Just team comprehension-wise. He's a big guy. I'm sure he's a big, heart-heavy guy in the locker room, so that's going to be a big hit there as well. Continuing on, Gardner Minshew. Not the biggest loss, I guess, but he is also out for the season with the collarbone injury. That leaves Desmond Ridder to be their QB1. Not really much I can say about Ridder. Actually, there is a lot I can say, but it wouldn't be positive. I can tell you that I watched him last year as a Falcons fan, and he was one of the worst quarterbacks I have ever watched. So if you're a Raiders fan, do not expect anything big. And Ridder will go on to play his former team, the Atlanta Falcons, on December 16th and at home. So let me just compare these stats a little bit. So obviously, I just said Ridder played for the Falcons last year. He was pretty terrible. We benched him a couple of weeks. He was hurt, I think, a little bit. Taylor Heineke came in. It was a mess. The quarterback spot was a mess last year. We went 7-10 for the last 4 years. So another 7-10 season because of him. So not he didn't play well. That's just me being nice to him. If you were there last year with me, you've heard the mean things I've said about Desmond Ridder. Even I probably said something about it on this podcast. Like I said, Raiders do not expect anything. This guy does not know how to play football. In 15 games last year, he had a 64% completion percentage, which honestly, that's his best stat. He just checked it down to Bijan or Algier most of the time, and he got that completion percentage up. But he had just over 2,800 yards, 12 touchdowns, and 12 interceptions. 12 and 12 in 15 games that's really bad. I know a lot of people, when they talk about interceptions, they talk about Jameis Winston. He went 30 for 30 in an entire season. In just 3 less games, Ridder went 12 for 12. Yeah, not good. In 12 games this year, Kirk Cousins has 29 less yards, 4 more touchdowns, and 3 less interceptions. So when people say that our offense doesn't look any better, I looked them in the eyes and said, no, I just think you're wrong. Cousins is in a very tight pocket. He doesn't have a lot of space to get out. I mean, I guess Ridder did scramble last year. That's something he has over Cousins. But in terms of pocket passer, in terms of quarterback, Cousins is the better one, obviously. He's not going to do anything. Did I mention that if you're a Raiders fan, I'm sorry? I don't know. Anyway, a couple more things I got here. 2 safeties are out for a couple of weeks or maybe the entire season. Jalen Petrie, huge defensive loss for the Texans. He's been playing very well all year. I think the free safety spot, if I'm not incorrect there. He's been playing very well. And Bucs safety Jordan Whitehead, who has actually picked it up in the last few weeks. He may have a torn pec as well, which would put him out for the rest of the season, which would be very bad. So 2 safeties, 2 pectoral tears, 1 partial, maybe 1 complete. They're getting his MRI right now, but that would be a huge loss for already banged up Bucs secondary, who is looking in the bottom of the league so far, so not good there. In good news, the Buffalo Bills obviously did not play this week, but they could clinch a playoff berth and the AFC East title with a win against the San Francisco 49ers on, I believe, Sunday Night Football. And the Dolphins would also have to lose against the Green Bay Packers, and they play on Thanksgiving. So if the Packers beat the Dolphins, which I think they will, on Thanksgiving, and the Bills get one out against a really underperforming 49ers team this year, they will clinch the division and clinch a playoff spot. And that would be the first time since 2019 that a team did it in Week 13. That's a very impressive stat. The Bills are looking very good in a very bad AFC East. The 2019 Saints clinched the division in Week 13. Again, very good team in a very bad division. It was the end of Matt Ryan. The Panthers are always bad, and the Bucs. Who'd they had? They had Winston in 2019, who wasn't that bad, but started off the season very well, or very bad, I'm sorry. And last bit of news here. This one was very surprising to me, so I threw it in at the end. Jerry Jones said via the Athletic that they asked him, they said, Jerry, do you think you would extend Mike McCarthy for 2025 and beyond? And he said, I don't think that's crazy at all. This is a Super Bowl winning coach. Mike McCarthy has been there and done that. He has great ideas. We got a lot of football left. I'm just going to think on that one. I want to think about what I say in order to make Cowboys fans to not hurt Cowboys fans' feelings as much as possible. You guys have the worst owner in the league. Maybe not the worst owner, but the worst GM. Is that okay? Is that acceptable? Will you understand that one? The moves that he has made in the past year and a half have told me I could do a better job than Jerry Jones, it feels. Maybe I'm wrong, but he hasn't done anything to prove me wrong. I could have told you Mike McCarthy should have been fired 2 years ago. If this team wanted to win, he should have been gone 2 years ago, at least. I think Dak did deserve his contract extension, so there's that. CD also, fair contract. Jonathan Mingo for a fourth. I feel like you had other needs to address, but it's all right. You didn't go and get a running back. All right, have faith in your homegrown guys. I get it. It hasn't worked out. Your team is not the bottom of the division, because that's the Giants, who painfully are very much worse. But you have a terrible coach. You have one of, I want to say, a bottom-tier defense, besides for Micah Parsons and, on the occasion, Trayvon Diggs, who decides to play well sometimes. And you didn't go out and fix that. I mean, you got Eric Kendricks, barely, who originally was going to sign with somebody else and then decided, hey, I guess I'll sign with the Cowboys, whatever. After being like, oh, we're going all in this offseason, you signed one guy. What else can I say here? The defense looks pitiful. The offense looks pitiful. You're not even going to try Trey Lance, who you traded, I think, a fourth or a third for, over Cooper Rush, he's been all right, but I think if you try Trey Lance out and he ends up being really good, you could trade him for a high-value pick, to maybe the Raiders or something. But no, that's up here. You guys are right about here. But I should move on before I say too many mean things. Let's move into our game recaps, where I'm also going to talk about the Cowboys. But they actually won this week. I wasn't expecting it. Kind of on a fluke. I shouldn't say a fluke. It happened on a Commanders collapse. When you ask me what happened in this game, the Commanders blew this one. They blew it very, very bad. The entire team struggled. You had a chance to go tie the game. You had a chance to go win the game as well, and you just you had a chance to tie the game twice. Let's put it that way. And you messed up both times. So in 2 minutes, the Cowboys went up 10 points after a 99-yard kick return touchdown. The Commanders then kicked the field goal, and then they get the ball back. Terry McLaurin scores an 86-yard touchdown. That's amazing. You guys, you're down 27-20. McLaurin goes and scores an 86-yard touchdown, the longest reception in his career. And to go and tie the game, all you need is an extra point, but it's missed. I think Austin Siebert, is that his name? I don't know. The Commanders kicker shanks it. It wasn't even close. And then you go and you're like, okay, well, now we have to do an onside kick. So you do one of the worst onside kicks I've ever seen in my life, and probably I've ever seen. Let's just put it that way. One of the worst onside kicks I've ever seen. And they return it for another touchdown to go up 8. And then you have 30 seconds to go and tie the game. You're only down 8, and you don't really do anything with that. It'd have to be a miracle, but still, you had a chance, and you kind of just threw it away. Just a complete struggle by the Commanders. This is a game that's very easily winnable, and it's a division game that you kind of need to win if you want to end up beating the red-hot Eagles right now, and you blew it. Sorry. Jayden Daniels has just been on a decline in the past couple of games. He just continues to look worse and worse. I don't know why. But you play the Cowboys, who got lit up by the Texans last week. So it's not a question on, is Dallas's defense, legit? No, they're not. And you go 25 for 38, 275, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions, which is the highlight of this one, where, before Daniels was kind of playing safe, mistake-free football, and now he's got 2 interceptions, kind of costing the team. And, not really a good look. He was the leading rusher, though, which also could attune to his struggles. When a team doesn't have a good running back to rely on because, injury, you got double injury, both Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler out with injuries right now, and you kind of have to take everything on yourself, it could lead to a decline. I can understand that. He had 74 yards on 7 attempts and a touchdown. So in that regard, he did play very well. He had to put the entire team on his back as a rookie, and you've already got doubts about him, and it's kind of just like an explosion in Washington, right? Where you kind of thought, oh my God, we're gonna win the division, we're looking great this year. We got this rookie quarterback. He's in MVP talks, and he's kind of locked down rookie of the year, and it's just gone downhill since, which is not a good look for the Commanders. But again, he doesn't have a rushing game. His defense has been very, very bad. Him and McLaurin have really been the shining points on this offense, and McLaurin at least has now recorded 100+ receiving yards in 5 games this season, which is the most in his career. And he now has the 5th most receptions in Commanders or Redskins franchise history, which is, hey, that's very impressive. I mean, he was drafted in 2019, so he's had 5 years in the league, and he's already 5th most receptions in franchise history. This is a generational talent kind of guy, and too bad he has to play for the Commanders, I guess. He's finally got a real quarterback who can throw to him, and he's looked very, very good this year. He has been the shining point on that offense, combined with Jayden Daniels a little bit. But this is just a collapse for the Commanders. This should be a wake-up game for them to say, hey, we need to get our SHIT together right now and figure this out, or else we are possibly going to, get out of playoff contention, which it wasn't even a question a couple weeks ago whether they were, headed towards the playoffs or not. And now it's like, ooh, you don't know. The NFC hasn't been very good. So you've got a good shot, but, at least in your division, you're not looking great. For the Cowboys, though, there wasn't anything, I would say, out of the ordinary. Again, you had 2 special teams touchdowns. Brandon Aubrey had a couple kicks blocked. He's been all over the place recently for some reason. Rico Dowdle, he had 19 carries for 86 yards. That's not bad. That's probably one of his best games. Again, when the running back does well, the team does well because, if you can scare the defense with a run attack, they won't just play pass defense. I hope that makes sense. But Dowdle played well. The team played decently well, I should say. And they got the win, mostly due to defense and special teams, but it is what it is. They got the win. A win's a win. They kind of needed that one. Hopefully, that doesn't mean Mike McCarthy stays for longer, but it's looking like it. So strap in for another couple years of mediocrity. Let's move on to the next game. Titans at Texans. 32-27 was the final score of that game, and the Titans came away with that one. This was a real shocker. Coming into this one, the Titans were heavily underdogs because, let's face it, they haven't been very good this year. But you know who else hasn't been very good this year? C.J. Stroud. And a lot of people blame the offensive line. They blame coaching, I think. His receivers are hurt. He doesn't have Diggs. He doesn't have Collins. If you're an elite quarterback in this league, it does not matter who you have. You go and you beat the 3-win Titans. Right? Like, I know the team has been struggling as a whole. The offensive line has played one of the worst seasons of football so far. And I know that. But at what point is it C.J. Stroud's fault? I mean, you see this kid backpedal and take a sack in the end zone. You don't do that when you need to go and win a game. This is not the C.J. Stroud. This is not the elite C.J. Stroud that we saw last year where everyone's like, wow, this kid's going to be generational talent. He's going to, rule the AFC South? Yeah, rule the AFC South for, years to come. Like, this Texans team is going to be legit, and now they've kind of fallen. I mean, they're kind of lucky that they have a very weak division. Like, the AFC South, the Titans, the Colts, and the Jaguars are not going to catch them. But it hasn't been a good performance from the Texans this year. That's just end of story. Like, it hasn't been very good for them. Stroud got outplayed by Will Levis. Will Levis was 18 for 24, 278, and, I mean, he had a very bad pick six. Like, that, in a time where you look at the game and you go, okay, we're up, just play mistake-free football, and you throw a pick six, that's kind of why the Titans are moving on from him. He doesn't know how to play mistake-free football. He doesn't have a very high QB IQ. I'm sure he's got the talent. He's just not elite QB material. I mean, you could sign him for long and have what the Giants had with Daniel Jones, but I don't think that's the answer. I think you just go and get somebody else. You've already only won 3 games. You just do that the rest of the season. Draft someone good. Do that next year. Give Levis another chance. Do that next year. I'm fine with that. Just don't think automatically that this guy is the answer, because week in and week out he proves that he's not. But he outplayed C.J. Stroud this year, who's supposed to be one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. He's supposed to be this elite quarterback, like I said earlier. Stroud was only 20 for 33, 247, 2 touchdowns, and two interceptions, which it's already double the amount of interceptions that he threw last year. Double the amount of interceptions he threw as a rookie, when for a while he didn't throw any interceptions. And he was seen as this guy very careful with the football, very elite play reading, very elite, this is where I got to hit the guy, this is the space in the hole, like the hole in the zone, high IQ, whatever, right? And he played at a very high level last year. I won't argue that. I mean, he easily was the best rookie out of the class. But this year, he's thrown double the amount of interceptions and almost half the number of touchdowns. That doesn't just happen. I mean, that's on him. I mean, that's not his O-line's fault. But Mixon also had his worst game of the season. Mixon was 14 carries for 22 yards. When running backs do bad, let me say this one more time for you guys. When running backs do bad, when you have a team with a running back that underperforms, it puts a whole lot of pressure on your quarterback, and it tells the defense, hey, you don't have to be scared of the run. We can't run the ball. So they only play pass defense. Not only, but they're going to play more pass-heavy defense because they're not scared of Rico Dowdle, or they're not scared of Chase Brown, or they're not scared of Tony Pollard, who actually played very well. I shouldn't say Tony Pollard this week, but you get my point, right? It's like, hey, we're going to throw the ball, and we're going to tell everybody we're throwing the ball, so they know you're going to throw the ball. That makes it a lot easier for the defenders to counter the pass. So your quarterback is naturally going to play worse. And if you can't get anything going on the ground, Mixon, again, 14 carries, 22 yards total. That's bad. So your QB is, in turn, going to do bad. And if it makes you feel any better, Tony Pollard had his best game as a Titan so far. 24 carries, 120 yards, and a touchdown. When running backs do well, their QBs and their teams do well and they succeed. I mean, we're seeing this over and over and over and over when it's like, yeah, the running back does very well and the QB does very well. So you win the game. If your QB is trying to carry your team and your running back is not doing well, you're going to lose the game, and your QB is going to be looking for stuff. He's going to be looking to play that hero ball. He's going to be looking downfield saying, where can I throw this ball to make a play to get my team the first down because we're 3rd and 12 right now. He's going to play mistake football because he's trying to make plays happen that aren't there, and they can't take that away by running the ball. So when the running back isn't a threat or the running back does bad, the team will do bad and the QB will play bad. I mean, just last year, Dak was putting up MVP numbers. He was 12-5. They led the division because they had a running threat in Tony Pollard, right? And this year, they come in with Rico Dowdle, and for some reason, everything's changed. I mean, now he's hurt, obviously, but everything's changed, and you can barely get off of 4 wins. I don't know. That's my spiel, right? You need a good running back. Running backs have been undervalued for so long, and a lot of teams said, we don't need this guy, and it's hurt them. I mean, Cowboys, Bengals, those are your 2 teams where it's like, hey, we let go of our running back. You know what? I'll throw it out there. The Giants, sure, they were on pace to do bad anyway, but the Bengals and the Cowboys, those are 2 teams that should be in the playoffs but aren't because, well, I mean, bad defense. We've seen the Bengals in and out every week have a terrible defense where Joe Burrow's putting up, MVP numbers and he just can't get the win because his defense doesn't know how to stop a screen pass. And, the Cowboys just, again, there's no run threat, so Dak has to kind of put everything on his back, and it's not really working because they have a bad offensive line, and, I mean, CeeDee Lamb as a threat is huge. But other than that, I mean, it's not a threat. I mean, Jalen Tolbert is good, but he's not a threat. Like, when coaches sit down and they say, here's the guys we need to look out for this week, Jalen Tolbert is not on that list. Rico Dowdle is not on that list. Chase Brown is barely on that list. Zach Moss is not on that list. Sorry. Let me just say this as well. Devin Singletary is not on that list. I mean, I don't know. Running backs have just been so undervalued. It's something you really need if you want to succeed in this league. And we've seen a lot of teams who aren't really great through the air, have a decent run game, and they've done decently well. I mean, you see the Chargers bringing a guy like J.K. Dobbins, and they're already doing a lot better. The Ravens, they're just a weird team. They just can't play divisional games, but Derrick Henry has been outstanding for them. That's one of the reasons why they've won so many games. The Vikings have brought in Aaron Jones, and they're making Sam Darnold look like an MVP candidate. You know what I mean? So it's like, I don't know. I don't know how much more you need me to say it, but that's the end of my rant. Let's move on to the next team. Vikings at Bears. That was 30-27 the Vikings, and they barely walked out of that one with a win. Let me put it this way. Not statistically, actually probably statistically, this was Caleb Williams' best game of his career. He looked very, very good. He was just moving around in the pocket so freely. We saw that pocket presence that we saw at USC, come out in this game where it's like, hey, the Bears' O-line isn't that good, but, when the pocket's breaking down, he was able to escape. He was able to escape very well, actually, and he threw 32 for 47, 340 yards, 2 touchdowns, and he had 6 carries for 33 yards, which led the team. It led the team, so that means their running back didn't play very well. Everything was put on Caleb Williams, and I guess let's just say he's lucky he's playing the Vikings this week and not the Lions, because if they continue to do this next week, they're going to put up 6 points. Where if they don't have a running game next week, they are going to get killed by this elite Lions defense. The Vikings have been very, very bad against the pass, and I understand if that's your game plan, but putting your rookie QB in that situation isn't really ideal most of the time. But you know what? Caleb Williams, he handled it very, very well. I will give him all the props in the world because he put up, this was his best game of his career so far. He put up those numbers, and he looked like a seasoned veteran in this league. He looked like one of those guys where you circle him in the meetings and you say, we need to look out for him because he is a threat to our defense. And another guy who has really stood out in the last couple of weeks with a new offensive coordinator. I should have said that earlier, but obviously they bring in the new offensive coordinator. It's looked very, very good since they brought him in. But someone who's been way more involved since they brought him in is DJ Moore. He had 7 receptions, 106 yards, and a touchdown. I did tell you to start him in fantasy, so if you listened to me, you were probably very thankful. But this is a guy as well who wasn't involved at all. He was putting up very terrible numbers in a very packed wide receiver room, or at least what we thought was a very packed receiver room at the start of the season. But now he's putting up those numbers that we wanted him to put up before. He's getting involved in this offense. I mean, they finally got an offensive coordinator who said, we traded we traded for this guy. We traded a first-round pick for him. Maybe we should use him a little bit. And he is still the best receiver on this roster. Rome Odunze in time will be like what the Seahawks have in Jackson Smith and Jigba. But for now, DJ Moore he's finally getting involved, and he's proving once again that he is the best receiver on this Bears team. But it wasn't enough to overcome the Vikings, who had a very good game on the ground, if nothing else. Aaron Jones had 22 carries, 106 yards, and a touchdown in the second half, which is the first second-half touchdown in 27 consecutive games for the Vikings. They had not scored a second-half touchdown by a running back in 27 consecutive games. The longest streak, and bear with me here a little bit, the longest streak is 31. And that was set by the Dayton Triangles in the 1920s. Vikings, what happened? How did nobody pick up on this sooner? But you know what? They broke the streak. They didn't beat the Triangles record. Good for them. Aaron Jones touchdown in the second half. It did come off a botched punt by a very poor special teams play by the Bears. And another really, really good player in this one, Jordan Addison, putting up career numbers. He became Darnold's safety blanket. Jalen Johnson was just cooking, locking down Justin Jefferson. He had 2 receptions for 27 yards. Addison, however, had 8 receptions for 162 yards and a touchdown. Anytime they needed a big play, they turned to Addison. Every single time they were in third and manageable or third and long, they threw it to Addison, and he got it done, and he became their guy. Like I said, the safety blanket for Darnold. Again, a good rushing performance leads to a good pass performance, because if you don't, blah, 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 blah. I'm not saying it again. But the most surprising game this week was the Chiefs and the Panthers. I said it last week. Bryce Young has the chance to do the rest of the NFL a favor, and one of the funniest things he could have done was to beat this Chiefs team. And you know what? Good on Bryce Young, because he played the best game of his young career. And it might not be stat-wise, like I said before, but this looked like the Bryce Young that they traded, everything that they traded for him. This looks like the Bryce Young that they originally thought. This looks like the Bryce Young we saw at Alabama, right? He was able to throw to every spot of the field efficiently. When you look at a QB and you look at where they're throwing on the field, it's usually skewed one side or the other, they've got guys over here, or like it's all in the middle or it's all on the edges. Bryce Young, if you look at where he was throwing during that game, it is all over. It is every single spot on the field. He was able to hit every single spot on the field. That is so impressive, especially at his height level, which, was a big problem in the draft. It's been a big problem. I want to say so far it's been a pretty big problem, but that's not the only problem, but he was able to, make it and hit receivers in really, really tight windows with just pressure on him at all times, because the Chiefs, they have a very good defense. They actually have probably a top 5 defense right now. Steve Spagnuolo he's not dumb. He is one of the best coordinators, one of the best coaches in the National Football League. And when he's playing a rookie quarterback, or a second-year quarterback for that reason, I know Bryce Young isn't rookie, but he tends to play like one. He knows how to throw them off. He knows how to play against them, throw them, different looks that they're not expecting. They got a lot of guys crashing the line. They got a lot of guys coming back. They're not expecting it. Bryce Young, he had no problems. He was able to hit guys like Xavier Legette, or I want to say David Moore, who was their leading receiver in this game. He was able to hit them very efficiently in very tight windows, and like I said, he had pressure in his face. Have you heard of a guy named Chris Jones? He plays for the Chiefs, and he's very, very good defensive tackle. He was in Bryce Young's face the entire game, and Young had no problem. He didn't miss a step. He was 21 for 35, 263 yards and a touchdown, which is very impressive for Bryce Young against the Chiefs. They lost the Chiefs by 3 points. 3 points. The Chiefs have lost to one team all year. Kudos to Dave Canales. But Young is the future. I've seen enough. He's looked very good since being benched. It gives me a lot of hope. You got to remember that, this is his second year in the league. He's looked very bad. Don't get me wrong. He has looked very poor in those first 2 years. But this is what you wanted to see out of him. This is the Bryce Young you drafted. If he keeps playing like this, they could win more games. Simple facts. The defense has looked decent. It really has looked decent. J.C. Horn has been very explosive. He was very penalized in this game, but he has been very good all year. So this is a very young team that has a lot of potential, and they showed it in this game. Xavier Legette, another one of those guys, another player who has a lot of potential and looks very good this year. On the other side of the ball, I don't know what to think of when I think of the Chiefs. Are they good? It doesn't seem like it. They're constantly winning these close games against very bad opponents, where it's like, wow, we almost watched Bryce Young and the Panthers beat the Chiefs and Andy Reid and Steve Spagnuolo, right? So I don't think they're all that. This is probably the most embarrassing game of their season so far, besides getting smacked by the Bills, but they escaped. They won the game. A win's a win at the end of the day, but this is raising a lot of red flags for everyone out there who thinks that the Chiefs are the best team in the league. And you know what? Patrick Mahomes didn't play a bad game either. I usually put this one on Mahomes, say, well, he hasn't looked very good this year, but he looked very good in this game. 27 for 37, 269, 3 touchdowns, and he had 5 rushes for 60 yards. One of those rushes icing the game. But their leading receiver is Noah Gray. the backup tight end. He had 4 receptions, 66 yards, 2 touchdowns, which I do think is the future once Kelce retires, probably this year or next year. But I know it's early, but Xavier Worthy is not proving anything to me. He's like a glorified running back, in my opinion. They use him a lot on wide receiver sweeps. They use him a lot in designated RPOs, wide receiver screens, but he is not a wide receiver 1. 4 receptions, 46 yards. Despite his speed, he is constantly getting blanketed. He has potential, I guess, but these kind of, like, he's just speed. He's just speed. When you look at Tyreek Hill, who's also very fast, obviously, we know, he's not just speed. He's got good hands. He has good route running. Xavier Worthy is just speed. In my opinion, he wasn't even the best receiver on that Texas team. Adonai Mitchell was the best receiver on that Texas team. I mean, sure, he plays for the Colts now, and he hasn't looked great this year, but he's got a lot of potential as well. I mean, if you want to put it that way. But Xavier Worthy, just week in and week out, proving he is not good enough to be a wide receiver 1. And the Chiefs only had 2 sacks in this game. Defense severely underperformed against the Panthers. It is the Panthers. At the end of the day, they are still one of the worst teams, if not the worst team in football. This is a bad look for the Chiefs. Great look for the Panthers, though. But we move on. A couple more games here, and I'm kind of going to rope these two together. Buccaneers, Giants, and then Eagles, Rams. Again, I'm going to rope them together a little bit. I'm going to go on a little bit of a rant. So if you're a Giants fan, I'm going to give you a little bit of time to mute me, turn this off, do whatever you need. So, okay. All the Giants fans gone? All right, awesome. The Giants lost by 23 at home with Tommy DeVito at the helm. They had no points until the fourth quarter. This is a failing franchise. It is time to give up. Joe Schoen has absolutely ruined this team from the core out. Was Daniel Jones the reason they won a game in the playoffs? Was Daniel Jones the reason they went to the playoffs? No, it wasn't Joe. It was Saquon Barkley. But no, you signed Daniel Jones to a 4-year, $160 million contract, and then you said, no, sorry, Saquon, we can't sign you to another contract, and sign Brian Burns to a 5-year, $141 million contract to improve your already very good defensive line. But then you think, okay, the defensive line is good, so the defense must be good. No, it's not. So you have one of the worst secondaries in the league, and I wonder why that would have happened, Joe. I wonder why you have one of the most failing secondaries in the league. Man, if only you guys had a player like Xavier McKinney, who has 7 interceptions, who leads the league. How many interceptions do you have this year, Joe? Oh, 1? You haven't had an interception in 10 games? That's the longest streak in NFL history? Huh. That's so weird. I wonder how that could have happened. It's almost like when you give money for stupid reasons, you have consequences. But surely, you've drafted some talent, right? Right? No. And, besides from Malik Neighbors, we'll get to him. But other than that, you have drafted very poor since you've been the GM, since 2019. 2019? 2021? It was 2021. I'm sorry. Since 2021, when you drafted Evan Neal, who's statistically one of the worst offensive linemen in the league right now, Kayvon Thibodeau, who just hasn't lived up to his potential. He's been injury prone. He's been good, but not great. It's a decent pick, whatever. 2022, you go and get, I want to say, Deonte Banks from Michigan. He's not very good. Hey, don't come for me. He's not that good. He's got a lot of potential, but he's just not that good. And I can't really speak on the 2023 or 2024 picks because obviously they haven't played enough, but Neighbors at least has looked very good. That's probably been his best pick since he's been here, and it took him 4 years. It took him 4 years. So not a good look. And you really haven't brought in anybody where I've been like, okay, yeah, we're gonna fix this. We're gonna fix what we messed up. Brian Burns is not the answer. He's been all right this year, very average, if anything else. Kind of below what we thought he was going to be. And you signed him right after one of his statistically worst seasons of his career. So I don't really know what you expected. And then you get rid of Saquon Barkley. And we'll get to him later. Trust me, we will get to him. You get rid of Saquon Barkley and you replace him with Devin Singletary, who is just not good. He's just not good. The replacement you brought in for your star running back is not good. He's got 2 rushes, 3 yards, and a touchdown last game. And that touchdown, whatever. You get rid of it. He had 2 rushes for 3 yards. He's not even involved. What are we doing? Like, you get rid of the Daniel Jones contract. You get rid of the Brian Burns contract. You're saving $300 million right now. I mean, you signed Saquon. You signed Saquon Barkley. Yeah. But you know what? At least they have Tommy DeVito. He went 21 for 31, 189 yards, no touchdowns. He played fine. You know what? He played well enough last year to cost them a future QB, which I think is very funny. So, you know what? Good on you, Tommy Cutlets. You did it. You put the Giants just out of reach of a future QB. And, yeah, I don't know. Neighbors is frustrated. As a rookie, being frustrated with your team is just not ideal. I mean, we saw this with Kadarius Toney, which obviously very separate players. Kadarius Toney's not that good, but we saw this with him. One of those, players that just gets frustrated because they have to play on a terrible team. Just constant QB pressure. They had 4 sacks in this game, but every time DeVito was throwing the ball, he was getting hit. There's just a lack of care on the team. There was a fumble on the ground for 3 seconds, and nobody noticed it. Nobody cared. Baker Mayfield, who handed the ball off, turned around, and then looked down and said, "Oh, there's a ball on the ground." Jumped on it and recovered it while it hit your star defensive ends, I should say, the star rushing outside linebacker's feet, and Brian Burns, who just signed to a 5-year, $141 million deal, hit his feet, and he didn't even look down. This is the worst team in football right now. I mean, the Panthers beat them. I was going to say, I do think the Panthers could beat them, and they did beat them. The Raiders, at least, they have a future. Right now, you're paying Daniel Jones to not play for you, and you're paying Brian Burns a ton of money just to be okay. Good. I should say good. I'm kind of underselling Brian Burns a little bit, but he's just been good, right? He's not even the best player on your defensive line. And you might not even get a high first-round pick. And you know what? This upcoming draft, the quarterbacks aren't that good, so now you got to wait another year, and those QBs might not be that good. It's just a mistake. It's the end of an era with getting rid of Daniel Jones, but it's still just a dumpster fire as a team right now. But you know what? Good for the Buccaneers. They've turned it around. They figured out how to play without Tom Brady or Jameis Winston, and Baker Mayfield, one of the guys they could have got, absolutely torched them. They had 4 rushing touchdowns by 4 different players. Mayfield had one himself. Rachaad White, Bucky Irving, Sean Tucker from the rookie from Syracuse. Rookie from Syracuse. And Baker had 300 yards through the air. Again, terrible secondary. Baker torched them. There wasn't a real standout wide receiver 1 for the Bucs in that game, but the defense just couldn't stop anything. They lost 30-7. Is that the final score? Yeah, 30-7. Just a disaster. But you know what? At least the team that now has Saquon Barkley is doing really, really well, and it's the only team in the NFC East that's really succeeding right now, and it's the Philadelphia Eagles, who have looked amazing, absolutely just unstoppable in the NFC right now. Obviously they get A.J. Brown back, they get Devontae Smith back. They figure out, hey, we have this guy, Saquon Barkley, and he's really good at running the ball. And that's what they do. Saquon had 302 total yards and 2 touchdowns in this game. He's in the MVP conversation now. He's just been so consistently good, and he's just put up numbers on this, very good scheme fit for him with the Eagles, who have a very good offensive line. But again, very good fit on the Eagles, has played very, very well, and it's part of why the Eagles are doing so well. Why isn't he the MVP? Why isn't he in MVP conversation, at least? He had 300 total yards and 2 touchdowns, while the Giants' offense last game had 245 yards and 1 touchdown. Himself, in one game, outscored the entire Giants team. And, in fact, Saquon Barkley has more rushing yards than the Giants have as a team this season. It's just a disaster. It is actually just a disaster. The Eagles, he broke the Eagles' season single game record with 255 rush yards, and the Rams are just not good enough. Their defense is just not good enough to get them far. But I think if they figure out their defense, their rebuild, and their future looks very, very bright for the Rams. I've talked about how good their GM is in past episodes, but they have a lot of key pieces to build on, and the offense looks very good. I can't disagree with that, but the defense is just not good enough. Final score of that game was 37-20. And the Eagles just started running away with it at the end, literally running away with it. But let's move on to our next segment. I've said enough about the Giants and Saquon and the Eagles and how bad of a franchise they are. Let's move on to fantasy. I'm going to have 2 starts and 2 sits for every position because James isn't here, and I'm kind of going to run through them pretty fast. I was 5 for 6 last week, so you can trust me. I've been 18 for 24 on starts all season, 15.5 for 24 on sits all season. So I've been pretty decent, actually. I'm proud of myself. But let's start. I'm going to start with Baker Mayfield at the Panthers. Their defense is 27th in the league. He's been very good. Not much more I can say. It's the Panthers' defense. Baker, if you need him, he's been very good all season. He's been a top 6 quarterback, top 5 quarterback all year. He's just got that dog in him. He really does. Start him against this Panthers team. Again, another player who has just been on fire recently. Start Bo Nix if you don't already have him, or if he's a free agent in your league somehow, please pick him up because he's been very, very good against the Browns defense, who is 21st in the league, has had their struggles. And like I said, Nix has been on fire recently. I expect this one to be one-sided and for Nix to put up a lot of points. This week I would sit, and hear me out on this one, I would sit Joe Burrow, who I know has been really, really, really good, but he plays the Steelers, who is just a tough divisional matchup, and they're looking for a bounce-back game after losing to the Browns in the snow, which was also a very fun game, just not enough for me to talk about. But very, very good game. I love Jameis Winston, but we're talking about Burrow now. Tough divisional opponent he's playing, and he doesn't do very well against divisional opponents. But another QB I want to sit, and I talked about this a little bit earlier, sit Caleb Williams. I know I talked about him having the best game of his career so far, but the Lions' defense is just too tough. It's just too tough. We watched them, lock out the Indianapolis Colts and Anthony Richardson, who also had a very good game the week before, and it's not going to work for Caleb Williams this week. With running back, I want to say start Joe Mixon. He's been bad the past couple of weeks, but I know he's still got that 100-yard rusher in him. He's playing the Jaguars, who have statistically the 31st best, who have been the 31st against running backs this year, and he's just looking to bounce back after a bad week. Another running back, again, this is a guy who I shouldn't even have to tell you to start, but if you for some reason you're thinking about it, start Kyren Williams. Again, looking to bounce back. He's an absolute workhorse for the Rams. He scored a touchdown in majority of his games. He's been so good for them, and the Saints are 29th against the running back. Not good. And do I not have a sit running back? I don't. I don't have a sit running back, guys. That's depressing. I guess we'll move on to wide receiver then. Sorry, I got nothing. For running backs to sit, let's see if I can come up with some really quick. Let's see here. Who is playing the Chiefs next week? Oh, I mean, yeah, sit Alexander Mattison. That's pretty basic. Sit DeAndre Swift. He's also been very bad against the Lions. And sit James Conner against the Vikings. This is a tough matchup for the Cardinals. There you go. There's your 3 sits. 3 sits over 2. Whatever. You got it. You got me. We're going to go to wide receiver next, though. Start Marvin Harrison against the Vikings. I know I just said to sit James Conner because he's got a bad matchup, but it's a bad matchup on the ground. The Vikings are terrible against the pass. They rank 30th this year, and Marvin Harrison is just looking for another big game. Another wide receiver to start, and I know I'm going to sound crazy, but start, if you need him, start Quentin Johnston against the Falcons. I know he's had his drop problems. I know he's looked really bad, but the Falcons' secondary has just been terrible. We always give up just random 10s and 20s of points to random receivers, and they end up torching us. And Quentin Johnston just feels like that candidate, or like Josh Palmer. One of those two feel like that candidate for a torching, and that's what I would say. To sit this week, I'm going to say Amon-Ra, which I know is a hot take, but start or sit Amon-Ra against the Bears. Jalen Johnson absolutely locked down Justin Jefferson last week, who's arguably the best receiver in the league. Amon-Ra will not put up the numbers that he has been, and the Bears' defense is technically 7th in the league, but Jalen Johnson has just been so good. Sit Amon-Ra against him. And if you were thinking about it, stop thinking. Sit Romeo Doubs against the Dolphins, the best pass defense in the league right now, which actually it surprised me a lot. But sit Romeo Doubs against the Dolphins. He's been inconsistent with some bad drops, and he'll be lined up against Jalen Ramsey all game. It's not going to work out for you. If you need him, don't start him. Find somebody else. Sorry. But let's move on to our segment 3. Those were my fantasy starts and sits. Sorry, I kind of forgot about the sitting of the running back, but I came up with some decent candidates. So, take those, I guess, if you want. My game of the week this week, game to look out for, Eagles-Ravens. That is going to be a bloodbath. We know Lamar Jackson is very good against the NFC, but the Eagles have just been on fire. Otherwise, the Ravens haven't looked that good. They had a really pretty solid game against the Chargers last night, but they are playing an NFC team, which Lamar is historically good against. The Eagles, they're just on a hot streak. That's going to be a clash of titans, and I will get into who I'm taking in a minute. Ended out here. We got my quick picks. Obviously, James isn't here, but I went 29 for 45 this season. James is 27 for 45 if you care. Let's run through these. The best Thanksgiving game while you're eating with your family. Actually, this would be after you're eating with your family. You're just settled down, putting some football on. Dolphins at Packers. It should be a decent game. The Dolphins really need this one if they want to stay in playoff contention. But the Packers are also looking for this win in a very tough division, and I think they come away with it. They're just slightly the better team, in my opinion, and the Packers are going to take this one. and our Black Friday game. We usually don't have football on a Friday, but this week we do. It is the Raiders versus the Chiefs. Desmond Ridder sucks. Sorry, excuse my language there, but he is really bad. The Chiefs are taking this one. Desmond Ridder is not going to beat them. 1 p.m., best game here is Steelers-Bengals. I'm taking the Steelers. The Bengals have just been inconsistent all year, and I know their offense has been explosive, but they're playing the best defense in the league, and Mike Tomlin, who statistically is very good against divisional opponents, very good defensive-minded coach. And at 4, we have the Ravens and the Eagles, which we just talked about, and I am taking the Ravens. I would love to take the Eagles just based on the fact that they're red hot and they're also statistically playing the best football that we've seen out of the Eagles in a couple of years. But I do think that the Ravens will win this one. Again, Lamar's historically good against NFC teams. They have a good rush defense. It's going to have to all come through the air. And, I've seen it happen. It's going to be a bloodbath, I think. It's either going to be very one-sided or very close. That's what I would say. But I'm taking the Ravens. Sunday night, 49ers and the Bills. I'm going to take the Bills to walk away with this one. So that means the Bills would clinch the division, which would be huge for the city of Buffalo, huge for Bills fans like myself. And the 49ers have just struggled all season. They can't get it together. The Bills are red hot coming off a bye week. This feels like the perfect matchup for them. And they're at home on a Sunday night. Josh Allen, 280 yards, 3 touchdowns, and James Cook also has a touchdown somewhere in there. That's my prediction. But I'm taking the Bills. Monday Night Football, Browns and Broncos. I'm taking the Broncos in this one. I know the Browns are red hot, but not red hot. But they are coming off a win. But they're very inconsistent. Jameis Winston, I love you, but I can't take you to beat this Broncos defense that has just been top of the league this year. I'm taking the Broncos and red hot Bo Nix and Sean Payton. But that will do it for this episode. Thank you for joining me and just me on this Field Goals and Forecast podcast. We'll see you all next week. Bye-bye. And hopefully I'm joined by James.